Your boyfriend chose me. Nobody needs you. That's what my stepmother said into my ear at 10:22 on a Monday morning. I was standing 3 feet outside the break room at the community clinic where I worked. 2 nurses were inside. The receptionist was at her desk beyond them. For 6 months, my stepmother, the woman my father married 4 years earlier, had been playing widow while carrying on with the man I dated for 3 years. She was calling from somewhere in Cedar Grove 3.5 weeks before she planned to marry him in Florida. Not to warn me, to gloat. I did not shake, I did not cry. I walked into the break room and set the phone flat on the counter, screen up, because for 6 months I had also been sitting on a camera, a little black rectangle above my father's front door. It had recorded the night he died, and I had never opened it. If this story is already sitting in your chest, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It tells me you want more of these. And drop your city and your local time in the comments. I love knowing where in the world you're listening from. I'm Carolina, 28, a nurse assistant in a small town called Cedar Grove, Ohio. And this is the story of what happened after I finally opened the camera my father asked me to keep safe. For almost a year, there was a small black rectangle framed above my couch. Guests thought it was modern art. It wasn't. Every night before I turned off the lamp, I looked up at it. I said the same thing my father had said to it, in the same voice he used. It was the only prayer I knew then. But that camera had not always lived on my wall. For nearly 3 years, it had lived above my father's front door. 2 years of that were ordinary. Package deliveries, the mailman. My father in his slippers picking up his newspaper. 6 months of it was footage I refused to touch. Then, on a Monday in February, just under 8 hours after my stepmother told me nobody needed me, I opened the app. Let me back up. That morning, before the call, I'd made coffee in a chipped mug I inherited from my mother, poured it into a stainless travel cup that leaked around the lid, grabbed my keys off the ring by the door, drove 11 minutes to the community clinic where I worked. I remember what song was on the radio. I remember counting stoplights. I remember the small, ordinary things because ordinary was already leaving me, and I didn't know it yet. I'd been living alone in the studio apartment since October. The night my father died began on a Monday, August 12th. It had been almost 6 months before the call. The apartment was a walk-up above a hardware store on Main Street. One window, one radiator that clanked, a bed, a couch, a chair I got secondhand from the woman who lived down the hall. Nothing on the walls. Nothing framed. I was too tired to hang things. The first thing I hung was that camera. I hung it after everything else. It was the last thing I did before I let myself sleep in that apartment like a person again. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you who my father was first, because you have to understand him before you understand what she took. His name was William, but nobody in Cedar Grove ever called him that. He was Bill from the minute he could walk. He owned a garage on Route 33, Ashwood Auto, from the year he turned 26 until the year he turned 59. He sold it after his first heart scare in 2019. He didn't want to. He was just tired. He raised me alone. My mother, Rebecca, died of ovarian cancer in January 2011. I was 14. She'd been a middle school art teacher. I still have her Christmas cards on the mantle, the pen drawings of cardinals she made every year for her students. I still have the tin box of watercolors under my bed. And I still have the lesson she taught me a month before she died. She said, "Kiddo, when the hard thing comes, don't cry in front of the people who caused it. Cry later when you're alone. That way they never get the video." I was 14 when I heard it. I was 15 when I stopped crying anywhere but the shower. I was 28 when it saved me. My father, Bill, used to write sticky notes and leave them on the fridge every time I came over. He wasn't a talker. He was a note writer. Little yellow squares. "Kiddo, blueberries in the second drawer. Kiddo, don't touch the alternator, I have to sell that. Kiddo, if it rains on Sunday, we cook indoors." Sometimes he'd write "Love, Dad" at the bottom. Sometimes he wouldn't. It meant the same thing. He met Vanessa Prescott in November 2020. She was 50. He was 60. He'd been widowed for 10 years, and I'd watched him fade for most of them. When he came home from the country club that first night and said, "Kiddo, I met a woman who knows every song from 1972. I said, "Good." And I meant it then. The wedding was small, 30 people, held in the living room of the house on Sycamore Lane where I grew up. Vanessa wore ivory. My father wore his one dark suit, the one he'd worn to my mother's funeral, and to my community college graduation, and to nothing else. He didn't cry at the vows. I did, softly, in the back. Vanessa noticed and gave me a look. Not sympathy, something else. I couldn't name it then. I can name it now. She smiled beautifully when the photographer said, "Smile." She hosted the reception in the same kitchen my mother had hosted every Thanksgiving. She learned my father's coffee order in a week. She learned nothing about me in 4 years. For the first year, I let her be. I visited every other Sunday. I brought grocery bags. I did the dishes she left in the sink. I told myself she was a widow like my mother had been a widow, only reversed. A woman who'd lost her first husband to a heart attack in 2018. A woman who'd finally found someone who could sit with her on a porch and not need to speak. I told myself she was kind because my father seemed happier. I told myself the small coldness in her voice when she said my name was a personality quirk. I told myself a lot of things. I did not tell myself the truth. The truth was that from the day she walked into that house, she was measuring what belonged to her and what belonged to me. And she had already decided that I did not belong to my father. Not really, not the way she did. Ryan Delaney came into my life a year later. February 2022. My father set us up. Ryan's father, a man named Ted Delaney, had been my dad's friend since the 70s, back when they were both apprentices at a garage 2 towns over. Ryan was 28, ran the front of house at a restaurant called Belfast Grill in the town next to Cedar Grove. Managed the servers, hired the busboys, wrote the specials on the chalkboard. Not a hard job. Not an easy one. He picked me up on a Sunday afternoon for a first date coffee at the diner. He was polite. He asked about my mother. He asked about my job. He remembered the names of both dogs I'd had growing up because my father had mentioned them once, and Ryan had listened. I let myself believe. That's the sentence that keeps coming back. I let myself believe. I moved in with him after a year. a small rental on Elm Street, back porch. 2 cats, mine, both rescues. Ryan taught himself to make his own bread on the weekends. I taught myself to like the smell of yeast. On Wednesdays, we drove to Sycamore Lane and had dinner with my father and Vanessa. My father cooked. Vanessa hosted. Ryan complimented her rosemary chicken. She poured him a second glass of wine every single time. In May 2023, I changed shifts at the clinic and saw my father less. Ryan started saying he was helping Vanessa with errands, fixing a cabinet hinge, carrying groceries in, driving her to pick up something heavy. I thought it was sweet. I thought he was trying to be useful to my father's wife. I never counted the times Vanessa and Ryan ended up in the kitchen alone while I was in the living room asking my father about his knees. I never counted anything, because counting is what you do when you already know. Thanksgiving 2022. Vanessa hosted. Ryan brought pumpkin pie from the bakery down the street from Belfast Grill. He brought it in a white cardboard box tied with baker's twine. Vanessa met him at the door. She said, "Oh, that's the one from Rosemary's. I love that place." She'd never mentioned Rosemary's before. The turkey was overdone. My father, Bill, carved it anyway, quiet, at the head of the table. Vanessa refilled Ryan's glass. Ryan laughed at her jokes about her book club. My father was on his second glass of water. I remember thinking my father looked smaller than he had in September. Then I told myself it was the sweater. After dinner, Ryan followed Vanessa into the kitchen to help with dishes. I stayed in the dining room with my father and asked him about the leaves he'd raked that morning. He said his back was sore. He said he was thinking of selling the pickup. He didn't finish the sentence. I got up to bring in the gravy boat. In the kitchen, Vanessa was standing at the sink with her hand on Ryan's forearm. She was laughing about something. Ryan was laughing back. Her thumb was moving, small and slow, on the inside of his wrist. It moved for maybe 3 seconds. Then she saw me and it stopped. I put the gravy boat down on the counter. I said, "Anything I can do?" She smiled that beautiful photographer's smile and said, "No, sweetheart, we've got it." Sweetheart. She had never called me sweetheart before. I told myself it was friendly. I told myself she was just that kind of woman. I did not tell my father. April 2024, Wednesday, 9:17 in the morning. A text from my father. Just one. New code, just in case, keep this safe. Love, Dad. Below it, 6 characters. Uppercase, lowercase, a number, a period. The new password to the Ring account I'd set up for his front door and the living room window in August 2022. I remember reading it standing in the med room at the clinic. I remember thinking, that's odd. He never changes anything. He still uses the same email password he used in 1997. Then I saved the text to my photos album, and I moved on. Because a woman had just come in with chest pain, and I had to help. I didn't call him, I didn't ask him why. That's the part I go over now. Every day. Every day of my life, I go over the way I did not ask him why. He wrote "just in case" twice. Once at the top, once in the middle. 2 just in cases from a man who had never written a metaphor in his life. And I saw them and I filed them, and I picked up an oxygen tank, and I went to help someone else's father. There's a specific kind of dread I recognize now, in hindsight. the kind that comes wearing ordinary clothes. Not a scream, not a warning. Just a slightly too careful text from a father who never used metaphors telling his daughter to keep something safe. Just in case. Just in case what, Dad? I know now. August 12th, 2024, a Monday. He called me at lunch. 12:06. I was in the break room at the clinic with a turkey sandwich and a bottle of Diet Coke. My phone lit up. Dad. Kiddo, he said. I bought new blueberries. The big ones from Kroger, the really big ones. Big ones, I said. Good. Come by Sunday, he said. Vanessa's out at the club that day. I'll cook. I promise, I said. We talked for 6 minutes. He told me about his neighbor's new dog, a beagle mix named Pearl. He told me the pickup's alternator was making a noise, and he was going to look at it Saturday. He said his back was tired. He said, "Kiddo, I love you." He didn't say it often. It was not a normal Monday sentence. I remember the pause after it. The pause where I could have said, "Dad, are you okay?" I did not say that. I said, "Love you too, Dad. See you Sunday." That was the last thing I said to my father. 12:12 p.m. Call ended. 2 nurses came in for lunch. One asked if I wanted to split a bag of chips. I said sure. Then a patient bell rang, and I got up and went to work. And I did not see Sunday. He collapsed at 8:46 that Monday night, alone in the living room of the house on Sycamore Lane, the house he had bought at 26 with a garage owner's savings, the house where he had raised me alone. He died just after midnight in the ambulance on the way to Providence General. I will not tell you what he looked like on the camera. I will not describe the way his hand pressed against the screen door or the shape of his mouth when he said my name. I will tell you when it happened. That is all. Because the specifics are for me and for the coroner and for the paramedics who tried to keep him alive after someone finally found him. Not the woman who was legally his wife. Not the woman he had spent the last 4 years trying to make a life with. Not the woman he was calling. She was, at that hour, 12 miles away, at the Sundowner Inn off Highway 16, with a man I loved, a man I had introduced her to at Thanksgiving 2022. I would learn the rest later, in pieces and timestamps, in receipts, in a folder titled "For My Father," in a camera above a door. I would learn the rest in a single room in a city hall building the next February. And I would say to a crowd of 70 of my neighbors, on August 12th, 2024, my father called his wife 6 times while he needed help. These are the records from that night. Not yet. First was Thagak months. The funeral was on the 15th, Riverside Cemetery. Vanessa wore black, expensive black, purchased in Columbus, and she read a eulogy she had written herself and had not shown me. It was 3 paragraphs of adjectives about my father: sturdy, kind, devoted, solid, beautiful adjectives. False in every essential way because she had chosen them for a stranger's ear and not for a widow's grief. She said the word solid twice. I sat in the front row. I wore the black dress I bought for my mother's funeral, taken in twice. I did not cry. I heard my mother's voice, the year I turned 15, say, "Don't give them the video." Ryan sat beside me. His hand was on my knee. His hand was warm. His hand had not been warm in weeks, and I had not noticed until that moment. He whispered, "I've got you, honey." I did not answer. I stared at the polished wood of the coffin, and I thought about how my father had never once used the word solid to describe himself. He would have used the word tired. After the burial, Vanessa hosted the reception at the house. She served baked ham and small quiches. She stood in the kitchen. Ryan stood in the kitchen with her. He was the last person to leave the reception. He was still there when I drove back to Elm Street at 10. Between August and February, I lost 13 pounds in any part of me that was still willing to speak. If you think this is going to be a grief story, one of those quiet, slow healing kind of things, keep listening. Because what my stepmother did next was not grief. And what I found in that camera was not closure. Hit like if you want to know what 6 months of silence buys a woman. And drop the words, "She thought no one was watching," in the comments, if you already see where this is going. February 3rd, 2025, Monday, 10:22 a.m., Riverbend Community Clinic, exam room 4. B just cleared. Me on my way to the break room with an empty coffee thermos. My phone lit up. Vanessa. I hadn't spoken to her since September. She hadn't spoken to me since October, when she left a voicemail about probate paperwork I ignored. I stared at the screen. I let it ring twice. Then I picked up. I don't know why. Maybe because it was a Monday, and Mondays used to be the day my father called me. She spoke first. Not hello, not Carolina. She said, "Your boyfriend chose me." I stopped in the hallway, 3 feet from the break room door. She said, "The wedding is February 28th. Sunset Bay Resort, Miami. Ryan has already changed his flight. His mother knows. Kayla knows. I am telling you as a courtesy." Then, before I could speak, she added the sentence, "Nobody needs you, Carolina." She had never used my full name before. Not to my face, not into a phone. I walked into the break room. 2 nurses stopped talking. The receptionist stopped typing. I placed the phone flat on the counter, on speaker, though I don't remember choosing to do that. Vanessa was still talking. Something about a dress fitting. Something about Kayla being maid of honor. Something about how I could come to the wedding if I wanted to be an adult about it. I did not answer. I did not hang up. I stood there and I let 2 nurses and a receptionist and the fluorescent light on the ceiling all hear the woman who had my father's last name announce her wedding to my boyfriend on a Monday morning at 10:22. Someone reached over and hit the red button. It was me. At 10:34, my inbox refreshed. A calendar invite, Ryan Delaney. Wedding, Sunset Bay Resort, February 28th. The email underneath was 3 sentences. "Carolina, I owe you honesty in person. Please come to Miami on the 28th. There's a lot we should have talked about a long time ago, and I know I did this badly. R." He signed it R, not Ryan. R, like initialing a memo. At 10:46, my phone lit up again. Text. Kayla Prescott, Vanessa's daughter, 22 years old, junior at Ohio State. I had not spoken to her in 7 months. "Carolina, support mom's happiness. You can't be the little girl who lost her dad forever." I read it twice, then a third time. Then I put the phone in my pocket and I walked back into exam room 4B, and I helped my nurse practitioner take vitals on a 59-year-old man with high blood pressure. And I said, "Yes, sir," and "No, sir," and "Please try to relax, sir." And I did not think about Vanessa or Ryan or Kayla for 2 hours. At the end of my shift, I signed out at 6:04. I got in my car. I did not turn on the radio. I drove 11 minutes home to the studio above the hardware store on Main. At 6:15, I sat on the floor next to the couch. I only meant to find an old porch clip, my father in his slippers, or Pearl crossing the yard. At 6:52, I said one word out loud. "Camera." I opened my laptop. I logged into the Ring account. I had not opened it since August 14th. I had a Ring Protect subscription that stored 180 days of history in the cloud. It was February 3rd. I had 5 days left before August 12th disappeared. I scrolled backward, past snow, Christmas deliveries, my father in his slippers picking up the paper. I was looking for anything ordinary. At 6:52, I reached the first event from that night. August 12th, 2024, 9:12 p.m. Front door motion. I stared at it. I had never, not once, clicked on anything from that night. For 6 months I had paid to preserve a thing I could not bear to see. My finger did not shake. I did not cry. I clicked play. The frame filled with the front porch of the house on Sycamore Lane. Motion detected. Autofocus. The porch light was on. The screen door was closed. Then it was not closed. My father appeared at the bottom of the frame, on his knees. I will not describe him. I gave you my promise, but I heard him, and I heard him say, in a voice I do not have another version of, in the voice of a man who is dying and who knows it, "Help me. Carolina. Tell my girl." Then quieter, almost gone. "Carolina." Then a longer sound. Then nothing. The clip lasted 46 seconds. I did not scrub back. I did not replay it. I closed the laptop gently, both hands. I stood up. I walked to the sink. I filled a glass of water. I drank it. I set it down. I sat back on the floor. My mother's sentence, in my own head, in my mother's voice. "Don't cry in front of the people who caused it. Cry later, when you're alone. That way they never get the video." I was alone. I did not cry because I already understood, in the part of me my mother taught to survive, that this was not a moment for grief. It was a moment for a plan. At 7:15, I picked up the phone and called Eli Halston. I found his number in the contacts from the funeral. He had been the neighbor from 3 doors down for as long as I could remember. Sycamore Lane, House 218. Retired principal of Cedar Grove High. He'd been at every one of my father's neighborhood barbecues. He'd sat on the front porch with my father on summer evenings. He'd been at the wake. He had said only 3 words to me that afternoon. Bill was decent. And then he had squeezed my shoulder and stepped back. He answered on the second ring. His voice was quieter than I remembered. "Carolina." "Eli," I said. "Silence." Then I said, "I opened the camera." There was a long silence on his end, so long that I began to think the call had dropped. Then he said very evenly, "Carolina, I have my own footage from that night. From my ring at the front of my porch. It's on an external drive in my office. I've been waiting for you to ask about that footage for 6 months. I did not know if you would. I said, Eli, what's on it? You need to see it, honey. Are you home? Yes. I'm coming to get you. No, he said. I'll come to you. I have your address. Bill wrote it down for me when you moved in October. He said, quote, if she calls you and I'm not around anymore, go. He wrote it on a piece of yellow paper. I keep it on my fridge. I did not answer for a moment. Then I said, please come. He hung up. I sat on the floor of my studio apartment in Cedar Grove, Ohio, in a rented walk-up above a hardware store on a Monday night in February. And I understood that my father had, over the last 6 months of his life, been quietly preparing a network for me. Not evidence. A network. And I was about to walk through it alone into a room with only one door out. At 8:20, Eli Halston knocked on my door. He was wearing a gray parka over a blue flannel. He carried a black external hard drive in a leather case that looked older than me. He walked in, took off his boots, sat at my kitchen table, said, "Water, please, honey," and did not speak while I got it for him. Then he plugged the drive into my laptop and he said, "Do you want the timeline in order, or do you want the whisper first?" "Timeline in order," I said. "Please," he typed. I sat down across the table. He said quietly, "Your father collapsed at 8:46 p.m. That is on the second ring camera, the one aimed through the living room window. The timestamps line up." I looked at him. At 9:12, he crawled to the front door. "Your porch camera caught the whisper you already heard. 46 seconds. He looked up at me. His eyes were wet. Mine were not. At 10:40, I walked Pearl past the house. The hallway light was on. Vanessa's car was gone. I thought she was out. I did not see Bill. I went home. I nodded once. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know." He turned the screen so I could see. At 11:10, something would not leave me alone. I called Vanessa. Then again at 11:12, then at 11:14. After the second call, I took screenshots of my call history because I knew I was walking back over there. On the screen were 3 screenshots from Eli's phone. 11:10 p.m. Vanessa Ashwood declined. 11:12 p.m. declined. 11:14 p.m. declined. At 11:15 I went back. I saw Bill behind the screen door and called 911. The ambulance got there at 11:34. Your front camera caught Vanessa coming home at 11:48 with a pharmacy bag in her hand. She told the paramedics she had gone out for medicine. I could not make my mouth work. Eli clicked once more. The 6 calls from Bill to Vanessa came from the itemized carrier record in his estate file. Your Uncle David requested it after the funeral. Bill called her at 8:49, 8:54, 8:59, 9:04, 9:08, and 9:11. 5 calls were rejected. The last was declined. I put my hand over my mouth. I did not cry. At 10 p.m., we opened the joint household credit card account. My father had made me an authorized user in the summer of 2022, after his bathroom fall. He'd said, "Kiddo, you need to be able to buy me an ambulance if you're not here to call one." He had filled out the paperwork himself. Vanessa knew the account existed. She did not know he had given me emergency access to it. I had not touched the account in 5 months. Bill's last purchase on it, on August 10th, was a bag of blueberries at Kroger. $7.99. I scrolled down through November and October. Vanessa's charges, mostly. Country club dues, a dress, a hair appointment. Then I scrolled to August 12th, 11:29 p.m. Sundowner Inn, Newark, Ohio, $59 flat. I turned the laptop so Eli could see. His face changed. He put his glasses on. He read the line out loud, slowly, in a principal's voice. Sundowner Inn, Newark, Ohio, $59, 11:29 p.m. He looked at me. That is the checkout charge, he said. How do you know? Ted Delaney came to my porch 2 weeks after Bill died. He had found out Ryan was meeting a woman at the Sundowner every Tuesday and every other Monday. He knew the room number, 214, because Ryan once asked him to cover a shift after he left there. Ted did not know how to tell you. He told me because I asked whether Bill died surrounded by his people. Ted, Ryan's father. My father's oldest garage friend. I stared at the line for a long time. $59. That was the cost. That was how much my stepmother spent at a motel off Highway 16 while my father lay alone for more than 2 hours before Eli found him. $59. At 11:52, I finished the folder. I made it on Google Drive because I already had one for my father's tax returns, and simple was the only thing I could manage. I titled it, For My Father, August 12th, 2024. I put 5 things inside. 1, the 46-second ring clip. Front door, my father on the porch. His whisper. 2, the itemized carrier record from his estate file. 6 calls to Vanessa, 8:49 through 9:11. Rejected, 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 declined. 3, Eli Halston's ring footage from his porch, with the screenshots from his call history beside it. 3 calls to Vanessa, 11:10, 11:12, 11:14. Declined. 4, a screenshot of the joint credit card charge. Sundowner Inn, Newark, Ohio, $59. 11:29 p.m. The checkout charge. 5, a 4-sentence caption. It gave the dates, the calls, the motel charge, and only the facts I could prove. It did not show my father's face. It did not describe what I saw. It said enough. I checked the folder once more. At 11:58, I changed the sharing setting to anyone with the link. I copied the link. I opened Facebook. I had not posted since the funeral. I typed 4 sentences, then pasted the link beneath them. On August 12th, 2024, my father called his wife 6 times while he was dying. The calls were rejected or declined. At 11:29 p.m., a charge from the Sundowner Inn appeared on their joint account. The records are here because his final hours deserve the truth. At 12:03, I hit share, set to public. I closed the laptop. I brushed my teeth. I turned out the light. I set my phone face down on the nightstand. I slept. I want you to hear that word, because it will matter later. I slept. Not soundly, not deeply, but for the first time in 6 months, I slept on my back, arms open, the way my father used to sleep, in a body that had finally handed the weight to someone else. At 6 a.m., the phone woke me. Not one call. A cascade. I rolled onto my side. I opened one eye. Screen alight. Notification bar. 87 missed calls. 162 texts. 23 voicemails. Voicemail 1, left at 3:51 a.m. My stepmother, hoarse, half screaming, "You can't do this to me, Carolina, you can't. Take it down right now. I did not do that. I did not. Carolina, Carolina, you take it down." Voicemail 2, 4:17 a.m. My stepmother, calmer, cold. "I will sue you into the ground. I will sue you for every dime you have. You have destroyed my life." Voicemail 3, 5:22 a.m. My stepmother, sobbing, "I loved your father. I did, please, Carolina, please." Voicemail 4, Ryan, 3:58 a.m. "Please pick up, please pick up." Voicemail 5, Ryan, 5:40 a.m. "Carolina, please, I know how this looks. Please." Voicemail 6 through 23, my aunts, my father's brother David, 2 women from my father's church who had never called me before in my life, a reporter from the Cedar Grove Chronicle, 3 neighbors I did not know by name, and a woman who introduced herself as the president of Vanessa's book club. "Kayla, nothing, not one word." I turned off the ringer. I put on my scrubs. I made coffee in the chipped mug. I drove 11 minutes to the community clinic. I clocked in at 7:29. I said good morning to the receptionist. I did not tell anyone. I did not have to. The break room television was already replaying a local morning segment about my father. 2 p.m., Wednesday, February 5th. Riverbend Community Clinic. Cardiac step-down bay. Room 4. Walter Grady, 68. Silver mustache. Retired welder from a plant that had closed in 2012. Congestive heart failure. 3rd admission this year. Blue hospital gown. Fingers thick from 4 decades of work. Wedding ring loose on his knuckle. Radio on the bedside table playing a country station he'd asked for. He smiled at me when I came in. "Kiddo," he said, "you back?" I said, "I'm back, Mr. Grady." He said, "My daughter's coming today. She said she'd be here by 3. I said, "That's real good." He said, "You met her?" I said, "Not yet." He said, "She's a nurse down in St. Louis. Different unit, but same idea." He was proud when he said that. His voice was thin, but his voice was proud. I checked his catheter. I checked his IV line. I checked his oxygen. I sat on the edge of the bed for a moment because he wanted me to. I held his hand. His hand was cold and dry and thick, and the wedding ring was loose. He said, "You look tired, kiddo." I said, "It's been a long week, Mr. Grady." He said, "You call your dad tonight." He didn't know. Of course he didn't know. He didn't watch Facebook. I said, "I will, Mr. Grady." I stood up, I patted his hand, I walked to the door. In the hallway, I put my back flat against the wall. I closed my eyes. I breathed. I counted 3 long, slow breaths. 1, 2, 3. The way I taught the new nursing students to breathe before they went in to talk to a family. I did not cry. Then I opened my eyes. Then I walked back in, because that is what daughters do. Earlier that Wednesday, Vanessa posted a video to Instagram. Beige turtleneck, mascara rubbed into gray shadows under her eyes. She said manipulation and harassment and grief until the words stopped meaning anything. I am being harassed by the stepchild of my late husband, she said. She was jealous of our love. Stepchild, not stepdaughter, like I was a diminutive. I did not answer her. I did not post again. The folder was already there. It did not need me to argue for it. By Wednesday night, the ring clip had 340,000 views. On Thursday afternoon, Sunset Bay Resort sent me a direct message. They had become aware of the public records surrounding the event scheduled for February 28th. They asked whether I wanted to provide anything further before they decided what to do. I read the message once. I did not reply. By Friday, the ring clip had passed 1 million views. The Cedar Grove Chronicle ran the story in its Saturday edition. What a neighbor caught on camera after Ashwood's death. They used my father's funeral portrait beside a photograph of the porch at Sycamore Lane. I had spent too many years explaining what I knew to people determined not to hear it. The folder had the dates, the calls, the charge, the silence between them. For the first time, I did not need to make anyone understand. I only had to let the truth stay where I had put it. Between February 10th and February 14th, I did not make plans. I made one page. I sat at my kitchen table with a sheet of white printer paper, a pencil, and a ruler. I drew one vertical line down the middle. Then I wrote the night in order, exactly as the records showed it. 8:46 p.m. Collapse. 8:49 p.m. Call 1 to Vanessa. Rejected. 8:54 p.m. Call 2. Rejected. 8:59 p.m. Call 3. Rejected. 9:04 p.m. Call 4. Rejected. 9:08 p.m. Call 5. Rejected. 9:11 p.m. Call 6. Declined. 9:12 p.m. Front door motion. 9:13 p.m. The whisper ends. 10:40 p.m. Eli walks Pearl past the house. 11:10 p.m. Eli calls Vanessa. Declined. 11:15 p.m. Eli sees my father and calls 911. 11:34 p.m. Ambulance arrives. 11:48 p.m. Vanessa comes home. I left space between the lines. Not because I needed to imagine what happened there, because I could not. I hung the page on my refrigerator with the cardinal magnet my mother had given me at 12. Every morning, I saw the 22 minutes between the first call and the last. Every night, I saw the more than 2 hours that followed. On the 14th, Eli called. "How are you holding up, honey?" "I am holding up." Then he said, "When this is over, that camera does not belong on that door anymore. Bring it home." I looked at the empty wall above my couch. "I'll help you take it down," he said. "But you have to say when." "I'll say when." We hung up. I looked at that empty wall for a long time. By the 17th, 2 women from my father's old church had brought me a chicken casserole, real ceramic dish, a yellow dish towel wrapped around it. They did not ring my bell. They left it outside my studio door with a note that said only, "You honored him." I stood in the doorway with that dish in my hands for a long time before I brought it inside. The restaurant reviews, the internet arguments, the strangers dissecting Ryan's face in old photographs. I did not follow any of it. I had not made the folder to ruin a restaurant or make a man unemployable. I had made it because my father had called for help, and someone needed to say that he had. On Tuesday afternoon, February 18th, Eli called me. "Vanessa is scheduled to speak at Friday's town hall," he said. Her monthly widow gratitude thing. I knew the one. She had been doing it since September. 5 minutes at the end of the meeting, thanking the community for its kindness, receiving flowers, letting people tell her Bill would have been proud. What about it? I spoke to Chairwoman Halloran. She agreed to give you a public statement slot before Vanessa. 15 minutes. Just the facts. Why would she do that? Because Vanessa made this public first, and because the records are already public. This is not a trial, Carolina. It is your chance to say your father's name before she says hers. Friday, 7 p.m. "You'll say what needs saying," Eli said. "Just the facts." I looked at the page on my refrigerator. "Just the facts," I said. February 19th, Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Somebody pounded on my apartment door. I was at the kitchen table warming leftover chicken casserole. I froze with the fork in my hand. The door pounded again, 3 times hard. Then her voice. "Carolina, open this door!" Vanessa. She had never been to my studio. She had refused to help me move in October, and I had never given her the number. But Ryan knew where I lived. That was enough. She pounded again. She screamed. "You can't do this to me. You can't. Open this door." The line. The same line she had left in voicemail at 3:51 a.m., now pounding on the actual door of my rented apartment, in person, in front of my neighbors. On a Wednesday, I stood 10 feet inside the door. I did not open it. I did not move. I set the fork down flat on the counter. I picked up my phone. I opened the voice memo app. I hit record. She kept pounding. "Carolina, I know you're in there. I can hear the fridge. Open this door." She was crying. Or she wanted me to think she was crying. It didn't matter which. I had already decided that the sounds of Vanessa Ashwood, née Prescott, could be evidence. The neighbor across the hall, a woman named Mrs. Rennie, cracked her own door and started filming on her phone. I would learn this later. I would receive her video by text at 2 a.m. the next morning, time-stamped, 12 minutes and 8 seconds. Vanessa pounded for nearly 40 minutes. Then she left. I did not open the door. I did not stop the voice memo until I heard the outer building door slam. Then I sat on the floor next to the couch. I did not cry. Thursday morning, 11 a.m., Ryan sent a text. 6 paragraphs, line breaks between every sentence. He had never done that before. I recognized the format from a How to Apologize article on a site I had once seen open on his phone. He said, "Carolina, I owe you the truth. I don't know what happened to us. I don't know when it started. It wasn't planned. It wasn't. You have to believe that. Vanessa was... She was grieving. I was trying to be there for her. I got confused. I know how it looks. It doesn't look like the truth. The wedding was her idea, not mine. I never said yes. I don't know how to explain. Please call me, please. I still love you. I still love you. I've loved you the whole time." He signed it. "Ryan, please." I read it once. I read it twice. I copied the text into a note. I titled the note Exhibit R. Ryan Delaney Reconciliation Text. February 20th, 2025, 11:02 a.m. I saved the note to my iCloud. Then I deleted the text. Then I put the phone down. Then I made another cup of coffee. I did not answer him. I would not answer him for the next month. I would not answer him ever. I kept the note because my mother had told me one more thing. She'd said in a hospital bed in December 2010, with a Christmas ornament of a cardinal in her hand, "Kiddo, if a man ever tells you he still loves you at the exact moment his life is falling apart, screenshot the message, then walk away. He isn't loving you. He's negotiating." Friday, February 21st, 6 p.m. Eli at my kitchen table. We had the 2 laptops, mine and his. 2 USB drives, one blue, one silver, each with an identical copy of the folder, belt and suspenders. Eli had insisted. We rehearsed. Not what I would say. What Eli called just the facts. 2 sentences, he said. That is what you open with, no more. If you say more, you're negotiating. And I don't want you negotiating tonight, honey. I said, give me the 2 sentences. He said, you already know them. 2 sentences. Just the facts. I read them off the folder document. On August 12th, 2024, my father called his wife 6 times while he needed help. These are the records from that night. Eli said, that's 2 sentences. Good. Say them flat, say them slow. Then press play and stop talking. Let the room hear. I said, what if I cry? He said, you won't. You know you won't. But if you do, you cry and you keep going. Anybody in that room who's ever loved anybody will understand. I said, what if Vanessa says something? He said, she will. Let her. Do not answer her. You do not owe her the reply. Play the whisper. Sit down. I said, what if Kayla comes? He said, then Kayla comes. She lost her father too. She knows what it means when a daughter cannot reach him in time. She'll hear the whisper the same way everybody else does. I said, Eli, why did you do this? Why are you doing this? He looked at me. He said, because Bill Ashwood was my neighbor, and a father's daughter does not stand alone in a room like that. 6:40 p.m., rain on the windshield, the 2 of us in my old Honda, Eli in the passenger seat, both of his hands on the blue USB. He held it the way an altar boy holds the offering. He did not fidget. The wipers were on intermittent. The lights of Main Street reflected off the wet asphalt in shapes I did not have names for. I drove 25 in a 35. I kept both hands on the wheel. Eli did not tell me to speed up. We passed the corner of Main and Elm, the house where I'd lived with Ryan. The porch was dark. His mother's minivan was in the driveway. Ted Delaney's pickup was parked behind it. I did not turn my head. We passed the Belfast Grill. The parking lot was almost empty. A single server was smoking in the doorway. She looked up and watched my car pass. She did not wave. She recognized me. I saw her recognize me. I did not wave back. We passed River Bend Community Clinic, my workplace, dark, locked up. A single security light on above the back entrance. We pulled into the Cedar Grove City Hall parking lot. The lot was full. I have never seen the lot full for a February town hall. Usually there are 8 cars and one is the janitor's. Tonight, cars were tucked along the curb outside City Hall. More than I had ever seen for a February town hall. Word had traveled. I put the Honda in park. I turned off the wipers. I looked at Eli. He said, "You're ready." I said, "I know." 7 p.m., Cedar Grove City Hall chambers. The room was a small auditorium. Wood paneling on the walls that had not been sanded down since 1978. A dais at the front with a wooden podium and a microphone on a boom. 6 council seats behind the dais. Chair Councilwoman Renee Halloran on the center chair. No relation to Frances, though Frances was in the front row with her notepad open. 2 ceiling fans, both spinning. About 70 folding chairs. All full. Standing room down the sides. Eli and I sat in the back row, 3rd chair from the left aisle. I put my coat on the seat beside me because Eli was setting up the laptop on the little side console at the back. 7:02. Vanessa walked in. She wore navy. Understated. Tastefully understated. She had done her makeup exactly the way she had done it for the funeral. Same lipstick. Same eyeshadow. She carried a small clutch that matched her shoes. She had come to give a widow's speech. She had done her hair the night before. She did not see me. Her line of sight was on the podium. She walked up the center aisle. She smiled at Renee Halloran. She sat in the front row, 2nd seat, next to a woman I recognized from her book club. Behind her at 7:04, Kayla walked in. Kayla wore a college sweatshirt and jeans. She had not done her hair. She had not put on makeup. She looked 12 years old to me for the first time in my life. She did not sit with her mother. She walked to the very back row. Same row as Eli and me. She sat 2 chairs down. She did not look at me. She did not look at Vanessa. She looked at her hands. Then she took out her phone. Then she opened the camera. Then she waited. 7:12 p.m. Chairwoman Halloran said, in a mild voice, "Next item on the agenda. Public statement, Miss Carolina Ashwood." Vanessa's shoulders locked. Her hand froze around the clasp of her clutch. She turned her head, slowly, precisely, and looked over her shoulder for the first time. She saw me. Her face did not fall. Her face went white, which is different. I stood up. I walked from the back of the room to the podium. It was not a long walk. It was maybe 40 feet. The room was quiet enough to hear my heels on the wood floor. I did not hurry. Eli walked beside me carrying his laptop and the USB. He set the laptop down on the small side table beside the podium. He plugged the USB in. He turned the laptop screen so the whole room could see. He nodded at the technician in the projection booth. The screen above the dais came alive. I stepped up to the microphone. I said the 2 sentences. On August 12th, 2024, my father called his wife 6 times while he needed help. These are the records from that night. Eli hit play. The screen split in 2. On the left, Eli's porch footage, time-stamped 11:10 p.m., then 11:12, then 11:14. On the right, screenshots from his call history. Vanessa Ashwood, declined, declined, declined. 3 times. On a warm August night, my father's neighbor called my father's wife. 3 times, she declined. The room did not breathe. Then Eli tapped the next file. A screenshot of a credit card statement. Sundowner Inn, Newark, Ohio. 11:29 p.m. $59. Vanessa stood up. She said, loud, cracking, "That's manipulated. Anyone can edit a video. That's not what anyone can edit." I did not answer her. I looked at Eli. "Audio only," I said. He froze the projector on an empty frame of the porch. Not my father's body. Not his face. Just the lit doorway and the screen door. Then he pressed play. For 46 seconds, the room heard what I had heard alone. "Help me, Carolina, tell my girl." Then quieter. "Carolina." Then the longer sound, then nothing. Vanessa's mouth opened. No sound came out. Not because she was pretending. Because she couldn't. Her jaw hung. Her fingers were on the back of the empty chair in front of her. Her rings glinted under the fluorescence. Somebody in the third row covered his face with both hands. Francis Halloran, the reporter, was crying silently. She kept writing anyway. That was her job. Chairwoman Halloran, at the dais, set her gavel down on the wood. She did not raise it. She did not call order. She let the moment stand. I did not move away from the microphone. I stood still. I let it finish. I let the last silence of my father's life be heard by 70 people in the room and by about 200 watching the community live stream. Behind me, quietly, at the back of the room, Kayla was filming. She was crying, too. She was not looking at her phone. She was looking at me. The clip ended. The screen went dark. I said one more sentence into the microphone. His name was Bill Ashwood. He was my father. And that's what she did. Vanessa sank back toward her chair and caught herself on the seat. The woman from her book club reached for her. Vanessa pulled away. For a moment she said nothing. Then she covered her mouth, turned, and walked quickly down the center aisle. Her heels scraped the wood. She passed Kayla without looking at her, pushed through the double doors, and disappeared down the marble steps. Gone. At 7:20, Chairwoman Halloran took her gavel in her hand again. She did not bang it. She held it. She said, "Thank you, Miss Ashwood. This chamber will take a 5-minute recess." She stood. She walked down from the dais. She crossed the floor. She stopped at the podium. She looked at me, a woman in her 60s, silver hair pinned back, chair of the council for 11 years, and she put her hand flat on top of the microphone. She said quietly, so only I heard, "Your father was a good man, Carolina. Thank you for saying his name into this room." Then she walked out. Eli walked up beside me. He said into the room, at just above a speaking voice, but a principal speaking voice, which is a very specific instrument, "That was a father's daughter." The room stood up. Not for me, not for Vanessa, for my father. The whole back half of the auditorium was on its feet. The front rows followed. Kayla was still in her seat. She had put her phone down flat on her thigh. She was not moving. Francis Halloran walked over to Kayla, walked calmly in the middle of everything, and sat down beside her. And Kayla let her. That was the moment I sat down. In the front row, in the empty seat 2 chairs away from where my stepmother had been sitting 3 minutes earlier. Eli next to me, his hand on my shoulder. He did not squeeze. If you are the person in your family who keeps quiet, who keeps the receipts, because you were taught not to make a scene, this is your reminder that a boundary spoken once in public is worth more than 1,000 nights of forgiveness in private. Hit like if any part of this made you sit up straighter tonight. And drop the words, "His name was Bill," in the comments if you want the world to remember him with me. Saturday, February 22nd, 9:06 a.m., an email from Sunset Bay Resort, Miami. 2 sentences. Ms. Ashwood, in light of the public records that came to our attention, we are canceling the event scheduled for the 28th. The deposit will not be refunded. That afternoon, Belfast Grill took Ryan off the schedule pending a review. By the following week, he was gone. The manager gave him one sentence. Your conduct is no longer compatible with this restaurant. Ryan did not appeal. Wednesday, February 26th, Kayla texted me. I'm sorry, I didn't know. I wrote back 3 words. I know, Kayla. Then I put the phone down. By Friday, Vanessa had left Cedar Grove. I did not ask where she went. Ryan disappeared from social media. I did not look for either of them. Friday, February 28th, the day that wasn't. Uncle David met us at Sycamore Lane just after 9. The estate attorney had confirmed that the Bel Air, the tools in the garage, and the ring equipment were listed among the personal things my father had left to me. Vanessa had taken her suitcases and left the house 2 days earlier. David unlocked the side door, then stepped back and gave us privacy. The house was quiet. The Chevy Bel Air was still in the garage. My father's 1957 dark green with the cream stripe, its keys hanging on the pegboard where he had always kept them. Eli opened the garage door, and cold February light fell across the hood. Your dad talked about restoring this with you, he said. I know, so we began. Eli took the passenger side door. I took the driver's side. We spent the morning removing rusted trim, wiping away years of dust, and clearing enough space around the engine to see what my father had left unfinished. Near noon, Eli checked the battery. I held the flashlight. After a few tries, the engine coughed once, then again, then it turned over. Eli laughed. I did too. It was not restored, not even close. But for the first time since August, the garage sounded like my father was still somewhere nearby. After lunch, David handed me the small screwdriver set my father kept in the garage. I carried it to the porch and set up the ladder beneath the camera. Eli held the base with both hands. I climbed to the 3rd rung. 4 screws, crosshead. I had brought the right screwdriver in my coat pocket. Screw 1. Screw 2. Screw 3. Screw 4. The camera came off the wood into my palm. It was heavier than I expected. Back at my apartment, I set it inside the cedar shadow box I had made in Eli's garage 3 nights earlier. Pale wood, slightly rough around the edges, homemade. I hung it above my couch. I stood beneath it and looked up. I whispered exactly what my father had whispered. Carolina, tell my girl. I nodded once. I turned off the light. Here is what I will say to end this story. He whispered into that camera because I had put it there years before, never knowing what it would one day keep. For almost a year, the small black rectangle stayed above my couch. Then when I was ready, I gave it to the Cedar Grove Historical Society. The plaque reads, "Some evidence outlives us." My father's last words did not belong to the people who abandoned him. They belonged to the truth. That is how I knew it mattered.